chanting and holding her 4 children, Sarah Attia was joined by 100 people today who stood in solidarity, begging the Canadian government to help bring her husband home.
Canada needs to call on Egypt to do the right thing with you.
Attia's husband, Khalid Al-Kazaz, has been in jail in Egypt for almost 365 days and hasn't been charged. He was the Secretary of Foreign Affairs for ousted Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi. He and several others were arrested, along with the president.
Just to think of what he's going through right now, it's 45 degrees in Egypt. He spends 23 hours a day in in a cell with no windows.
Al-Kazaz is a permanent resident in Canada, and Attia was born here. So were some of their children. They had been living in Egypt where they were building a school before he joined the government. She has since come back to Canada to plead for her husband's safe return. Today's protest follows this week's sentencing of another Canadian Egyptian, Mohamed Fahmy, a journalist who was sentenced to 7 years in jail, accused of providing a platform for the Muslim Brotherhood. There has been worldwide outrage about the sentencing of Fahmy and 2 other journalists who had been working for the news organization Al Jazeera. Prime Minister Stephen Harper had stayed mostly silent on the Fahmy case until this week.
We have been very clear on our concerns, deep concerns about not just the verdict, but about this process from the beginning.
In a statement today, the Department of Foreign Affairs says we are aware of the detention of Mr. Al-Kazaz, and Canadian officials remain in contact with his family to protect the private and personal information of the individual concerned. Further details of this case cannot be released.
We want them to take a stance.
That's not enough for Attia's family and supporters, who say Canada needs to do more.
He is one of thousands in jail without any charge.
Al-Kazaz wrote an op-ed in prison that was published in the New York Times today. It's titled, "Why is the World Silent?" Attia hopes making noise today will stop the silence. She says every day becomes more difficult to go on, not knowing when and if her husband will ever come home. Now, Attia tells me her husband was in front of a judge this past week and was ordered to be held for another 45 days without being charged. That means he will spend his 35th birthday in jail this week. Reporting live, I'm Naomi Parness. Now back to the desk.